Shanti. Namah Shivaya, and welcome to meditation today. Yesterday, I had a really wonderful conversation with a fellow yoga teacher, and we were talking about the spiritual aspects of yoga, and one of the things as we were talking, I noticed that he kept saying certain phrases or yogic kind of affirmations, but he, because he wasn't being specific whether he was approaching those affirmations from a non-dualistic point of view or a dualistic point of view. It kind of, it kept our conversation rolling, because I would ask questions like, well, are you saying this? And you could see him thinking that he hadn't really thought out, what school of philosophy he was coming from. As I've gotten, as I've continued to teach, I have to admit that one of the things that concerns me most about the way that Westerners, Americans in particular, we teach these yoga traditions is that we're unclear ourselves on whether something that we've heard is from a dualistic school or a non-dualistic school. And the beauty of the tradition of yoga and what has come out from the Vedic period all the way into the Upanishadic period, to the Buddhist period, to the Puranic period, to where we are now, which could be called, a kind of neo-Hinduism period within Indian culture, is that in India, historically, these schools of philosophy, dualism and non-dualism, they live side by side each other. They debated each other. They debated within their own traditions. But unlike Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, there was never a decision that this is the doctrine that we're all going to live by, and this is what everybody has to accept. So even today, you have a broad understanding of this idea of dualism and non-dualism within traditions that are within the same lineage, right, or the same line. Like, let me give you an example. Those who worship Vishnu, the sustainer of the universe, are called Vaishnavas, and within Vaishnav tradition there is dualism and there's non-dualism. There are those that believe that in a dualistic setting that God is here, and while I am a creation of God and my soul is immortal, I'm never going to merge and become one with Vishnu. I will very much. For Christians, it's very easy. I will die. I will go to heaven. My soul will sit there and be able to adore the magnificence of Vishnu. Right. So, very Christian idea of heaven. Also, Islamic view of heaven, that the soul will go there and be in eternal bliss with the supreme energy or the supreme personality of God, but never merge and become one with it. That there's always a little bit of you are not pure enough to actually unite with that energy. So there's separation. In non-dualistic schools of discipline, in Vaishnavism, which any of the teachings where the teachings are Radha and Krishna in the Leela and dancing the dance at the river and Krishna's playing a flute. This is actually a non-dualistic teaching that Krishna will dance and you will dance and you and Krishna will become one and everything will become Krishna, and it's that metaphor there is that you will unite with Krishna and become one with the sound of Krishna and the music of Krishna. That after many lifetimes and I'm purified my karmas and I have removed avidya or ignorance, and I know who I truly am, that I will then be able to be released from this body, and that upon truly understanding who I am, I will be able to reunite with what and who I am, which is I will become one with the divine, whatever the name of the divine is. That the energy within me and that energy is absolutely the same energy, but I have to understand that I and that are one. And part of that understanding too is the removal of avidya within the body, that if I start to see that I'm one with that supreme personality of God, that thing that is the creator of the universe itself, then everything else around me is too. So that's the concept of the oneness of being, that everything is the oneness of being, and there's no separation. The only thing that really separates me is my stupidity or my ignorance or my blindness or the kind of crud that keeps me from realizing the true nature of myself. And that's non-dualistic teachings. That's a non-dualistic understanding. My belief is that neither dualism or non-dualism, one is not right or wrong over the other. I do believe that as yoga teachers, when we say certain things like, everything is God. Well, are you seeing that from a dualistic point of view, or are you seeing it from a non-dualistic point of view? When we say, a lot of times, I will hear people who follow Krishna say, well, everything is Krishna, but then they'll start picking and choosing things they dislike or like, or, well, Krishna doesn't like the onions, and he doesn't like that's my favorite one. He doesn't like the garlic. He doesn't like the onions. He doesn't like the garlic. I'm like, well, you just say Krishna was everything. So that means that Krishna's got to be the onions and the garlic too. Either he is everything, and you're seeing that statement from a non-dualistic point of view, or Krishna is everything within the universe, but some things he's not, and there's things of lesser value. That's dualist, and if that's what works for you, that's great. If it's the non-dualistic system that, the sugar cane is no different from the garlic, then that's because it's all Krishna. One of the other ones is that, God is the doer. That's another one I hear a lot of times. And God is the doer. When that kind of statement is being made, are we seeing God as the doer from a dualistic point of view or non-dualistic point of view? Because they mean different things, right? So they mean entirely different things. From a dualistic point of view, God is the doer means that I have no free will. That my faith and my fate and my destiny has been predetermined by God, and I actually have no choices. And there are many people who embrace their relationship with God as that they are a puppet to God, that are being, that once they surrender to God, they have, you know, given themselves up completely to God's will, and they don't really have a choice in anything. I cannot say if that's right or wrong, right? If that's what's working for those people, then they should embrace that fully. But when they start to teach, they should also teach that they're teaching from that point of view. I have a friend who is a very devoted Hare Krishna. I mean, he's deep into the depths of the philosophy and the life of what the Hare Krishna movement is. And Hare Krishna movement is a dualistic system. And he believes that he is just a puppet and that everything he's done is doing since he embraced this faith is being done by Krishna through him, that he's nothing. And you know, I never, when I have profound, deep conversations with him, and he sees God as the doer as just what that means, that he has no free will. And when I talk to him, you know, I actually tend to pull back a little bit because his faith in what he believes is so passionate and deep that if you try to have a philosophical conversation with him, it kind of threatens him, and he doesn't know how to have a conversation about it. So I'd leave it alone. You know, I'd leave it alone. So God is the doer. I have no free will. God is the ultimate doer. What I find is that it kind of can lead to a lot of apathy personally. You know, like, you know, oh, I'm poor. God wants me to be poor. Oh, I'm sick. I have disease. God wants me to have disease. And for me personally, I don't really embrace teaching from that point of view. In a non-dualistic system, when I say God is the doer, to me, I'm saying that God is the doer in that he set the universe and time and the galaxy spinning, like and he, you know, gave life to it, and then at that point he is setting back and allowing the scientific laboratory to take place, where the individual soul, the jiva, is actually has free will and is living life after life after lifetime, understanding who the true identity is and removing this idea of ignorance or avidya to understand my full potential of who I am. Embracing that I am God. And so God becomes the ultimate doer, but God isn't concerning himself or herself with whether I'm going to have, you know, the grilled vegan cheese sandwich today or the, you know, the yogi's bowl today, right? God's not concerned with that on that kind of level. Whichever is fine with him or her, however you want to see that. And within, you know, I mentioned Vaishnav tradition, that there's dualism and non-dualism. Within the traditions of Shiva, there's dualism and there's non-dualism, right? One of the, you know, when I started really like trying to really understand Shaivism and the different schools of discipline, you know, I was very attracted to like the Angora, because they were like kind of eccentric. They're the ones that are like sitting around smoking pot and got the dreadlocks and the skull and kind of a little. It's a little could be considered dark by Western standards, but I was attracted to that image. However, they believe in a dualistic system. They believe that when they die, they have removed their karmas enough that they can go to the abode of Shiva, and they will sit and they will bathe in the presence of Shiva, but never merge and become one with Shiva. They will never experience Shivaham. I am Shiva. And then there are schools of discipline that believe that the purpose of life is to understand that you're Shiva, that you and Shiva are one. And a lot of times those are the less eccentric ones. That's what's kind of funny. The ones that I was not really visually attracted to, the kind that were that are really kind of seeing everything as a connection to Shiva. That my interaction with my family, my interaction with my friends, my job, my daily chores and routine, and my daily sadhana is all Shiva. And what I realized was because I'm not really a Vaishnav, I'm much more of a Shaiva. I realized that it was the idea of dualism that allow the Angora to become so extreme in connecting to the personality of God, or that idea of personal identification of God. Whereas it was in that idea of non-dualistic tradition that actually created kind of a situation that's kind of what you would consider normal, a normal person's activity in life, because everything was Shiva. And that was a real eye-opener, that non-dualism brings a kind of normacy to your relationship to God. Whereas dualism can bring a kind of extremist point of view, because God is always on the other side. So like my friend who I was saying, who's a Hare Krishna, he lives in a van, he renounces everything, he's an extremist. And a friend of mine who is a profound non-dualistic Shivite, he was just kind of this normal guy, just this normal dude who's kind of has a wife and kids and and deep thought, deep practice, but everything is Shiva. So when we teach these teachings, as yoga teachers, if you're not sure, ask who teaches you something. Are you saying this to me from a dualistic point of view, or are you teaching me this from a non-dualistic point of view? If you're reading it, find out who the writer is. Find out if they're teaching it from a dualistic point of view or non-dualistic point of view. And then spend some quality time with yourself and decide which discipline works for you, dualism or non-dualism. And guess what? There's a third option. If you're agnostic or atheist, neither one of these traditions are going to work for you. It's a whole different philosophy, a whole different school of thought that there may not be a God. That there may be, there may just be the idea of compassion, and a very very Buddhist idea of the relationship to God. But ask where these teachings are coming from before you spit them out and regurgitate and quote teachers, because somebody like me is going to say, well, are you saying that from a dualistic point of view or a non-dualistic point of view? And you don't want to be going, thinking about it, but just kind of parroting what another teacher has said. So taking a moment, setting up nice and tall, and closing the eyes. Allow your senses to come inward and relax. Feel how, like, as soon as you come into this meditative state, there is a relaxing of the mind. You know, whether you feel like that the divine is outside of you or is within you, that you are trying to connect, or that it's already there, it doesn't matter. But this is that moment that answers that question. Is it dualism or is it non-dualism? Is divinity outside of me and I'm a small part of it but not it? Or am I it itself? Aham Brahmasim. I am Brahman. Allow the breath to deepen. Allow the inhales to be deep. And allow the exhales to be deep. As you inhale, silently hear the sound of Om within yourself. As you exhale, silently hear the sound of Om within yourself. As you inhale the sound of Om, see the symbol of Om within your mind's eye, illuminated in the darkness. As you exhale the sound of Om, see the symbol of Om within the mind's eye. Inhale the sound of Om. Exhaling the sound of Om. Inhaling deeply. Exhaling fully. If thoughts come into the mind, allow them to rise and fall and try not to attach yourself to the thoughts. Attach yourself to the sound of Om and the deep inhale and the complete full exhale. Enjoy the breath. Feel the divine energy within you, connecting to the breath, the sound, the sight of Om. And your deep inhales and deep exhales. Continue to hear the sound of Om in the inhale. Om. Continue to hear the sound of Om within the exhale. Om. Silently tell yourself, I am not this body. Silently tell yourself, I am not this mind. Silently tell yourself, I am not these thoughts. Silently tell yourself, I am not these emotions. Tell yourself, you are divine, infinity, eternal, and everlasting. Now for the sound of Om. Bringing the hands together, bowing the head slightly to meet the hands. Namaste. So thank you so much for joining me today for meditation, and I will see you tomorrow morning, and we will continue looking into some of these very esoteric ideas of spirituality, yoga, meditation.